how do you really know that the things you believe are actually true? I mean, it's a question we all grapple with, and it's just as vital now as it was thousands of years ago. Today, we're going to dive into a 2,500-year-old framework for how to figure it out.
No, really. Just think about that for a second. Your most fundamental beliefs, the things that shape your view of the world. How can you be totally certain they're not just wrong? This isn't some new age dilemma. This is a timeless puzzle. To get some answers, we're going to travel back in time, way back, over 2,500 years, to ancient India, where a pretty amazing showdown of ideas went down between a young prodigy and the Buddha himself. So let's meet Kappadika. This kid is only 16, but he's already considered a master of the sacred texts of his tradition, the Vedas. He's brilliant, he's super confident, and he's about to walk up to the Buddha and challenge him on the very nature of truth. This is the position Kappadika throws down. He says, look, based on the ancient hymns of my tradition, only this is true, and literally everything else is worthless. It's about as absolute and unshakable a claim as you can make. But the Buddha's response is just fascinating. He doesn't fire back with his own claim, he doesn't say, no way, my teaching is the real truth. Instead, he just starts to carefully dismantle Kappadika's whole argument with a series of really simple, really precise questions. His first question is pretty straightforward. Is there anybody right here, right now, among all your wise teachers who can personally vouch for this truth from their own direct experience? And Kappadika's answer? No, Master Gautama.
Okay, so the Buddha pushes it back a step further. What about your teacher's teachers? Let's go back 7 generations. Did any of them claim to have seen this truth for themselves? And again, Kappadika has to admit, no.
And this is the final blow. He asks, what about the original sages? The actual people who composed these hymns in the first place? Did they ever say, this we know, this we see? And for a third time, the young scholar has to say, no.
And that's when the Buddha drops this powerful analogy. He says, a belief that's just passed down from person to person, without anyone in the whole chain having directly seen it for themselves, well, it's just like a line of blind men, each one holding on to the guy in front. None of them can actually see where they're going. So the point is crystal clear. The Brahmin's conviction, as strong as it feels, turns out to be, well, groundless. It's all based on hearsay, not on direct knowledge. A chain of belief is really only as strong as its very first link.
Now, Kappadika pushes back just a little. He says, well, it's not just tradition. It's also about our conviction, our faith. And this is perfect because it lets the Buddha broaden the whole discussion beyond tradition and point out 5 super common, but also potentially unreliable, reasons for believing something. He lays out these 5 shaky grounds for belief. It's things like just pure conviction, that powerful gut feeling that something has to be true, or just liking an idea. Then there's tradition, which we've already seen can be a problem, even clever reasoning, or just, talking it over with your friends until you all agree. The Buddha's point is that any of these could lead to something true, but they could just as easily lead you to something totally false. On their own, they just aren't reliable guides. And this right here perfectly captures the paradox. You can believe something with every single fiber of your being, and it can still be completely and utterly false. And on the flip side, you could have a belief you don't feel that strongly about at all, and it could be 100% factual and true. The intensity of your feeling just has no bearing on its truthfulness. Okay, so if you can't rely on tradition or even your own gut feelings, what are you supposed to do? This is where the Buddha offers a really practical way forward. He lays out a clear 3-stage framework for how to approach truth in a responsible way. He breaks it down into 3 stages. First, you have to learn how to safeguard the truth. Once you're doing that, you can begin to awaken to it. And from there, finally, you can fully attain it. So let's actually unpack what each of these steps means, starting with that first one. Safeguarding truth is the critical first step. It means you could have a strong belief, a real conviction, but you hold it with some intellectual humility. You say, this is my conviction, instead of saying, this is the one and only absolute truth for everyone. This step alone protects you from falling into that dogmatic trap that Kappadika started in. So this all sounds great, but how do you actually move from just holding a belief responsibly to personally realizing for yourself that it's true? What's the actual, practical, step-by-step guide for that?
And Kappadika asks this very question. He wants to know the how. How do you get from point A to point C, from safeguarding to attaining? The answer is this really cool chain of cause and effect, which the Buddha explains in a pretty clever way.
So what's really interesting is that the Buddha explains this whole path by starting at the end and working backward. He says that to attain truth, you need real effort. You have to do the work. But to even do the work, you have to be willing to contemplate the ideas deeply. And that willingness, it only comes from a genuine desire to understand. That desire gets sparked when you actually hear a teaching and ponder its meaning. You can see how each step is built on the one before it, all the way back to the very start.
So, what's the very first domino in this chain? What does this whole logical process of personal discovery actually rest on? Well, the foundation might just surprise you.
The foundation for this entire journey is conviction. Now, hold on. I know what you're thinking. Didn't he just spend all that time telling us why conviction is so unreliable? Yes, but this is a totally different kind of conviction. It's not the dogmatic, absolute belief Kappadaka had at the start. It's more like a provisional trust, a working hypothesis. It's having just enough faith in a teacher or a teaching to say, you know what, I'm willing to test this out. It isn't the conclusion, it's the spark that starts the whole engine of verification. And after hearing this incredibly systematic, verifiable path to truth, you can just imagine the brilliant young student Kappadaka is completely transformed. He showed up looking for a fight, for a debate, but what he found was a roadmap. And his reaction just says it all. He's in total awe. He says it's like the Buddha has turned something right side up that had been overturned, or revealed something that was hidden, or shown the way to someone who was lost. The dogmatic challenger becomes a devoted student right then and there. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to take away from all this. It's a challenge for all of us. Just look at your own deepest convictions. Which ones are you simply safeguarding with a bit of humility, totally open to testing them out? And which ones are you claiming as absolute truth, maybe without having really walked that path of personal discovery for yourself? It's something to think about.